Hello, my name is Lucas Brown. I'm from Geeks in the Woods, and now we're going to be talking about bootstrapping SaaS companies in Alaska. And so many of you are probably wondering, well, what is SaaS? What does it stand for? SaaS stands for Software as a Service, and up here on this pyramid, it's at the very top, and so it's a software that's built for end users. And at the very bottom of the pyramid is the infrastructure, and so this is traditionally servers that are going to go into some data center, and the innovations over the past 10 years have actually turned the infrastructure into a service. And then in the middle is some other technology for platforms. Or platform as a service, which is to make the lives of software developers easier. And so if you're a startup, this is the traditional model, is they start there on the left, and they have to have enough capital to make it to break even, which is where that squiggly line meets the horizontal line, and that's the promised land where all startups want to actually make it. And in between there's this valley of death, and they need capital in order to get there. And so I spent some time down in Silicon Valley and in Seattle. And traditionally, at least when it comes to SaaS and software-based companies, it's to go out and raise money from venture capitalists. But the crazy news is that while it's raising money from VCs is seen as validation, 75% of these startups actually fail, and 95% of them don't even deliver the results that they expected. And so traditionally, creating a startup has kind of been a binary model. There on the horizontal axis is the amount of capital required to achieve cash flow break even, so a low amount of cash on the left, a high amount on the right. And then on the vertical axis there is the scalability of the business. So if you want to create a highly scalable business, in the past, it would require a lot of actual software, and you need to go to the venture capitalist model. And then if you wanted to create a low scalable business, you could bootstrap that. But the innovations actually happening that we'll see in a second are kind of creating this new model where you can actually create a scalable business that reaches lots of scale, and you can still be able to bootstrap it. And so the main trend that's actually enabling this is cloud computing, particularly computing as a service. So when we were talking about that pyramid at the beginning, those different layers actually becoming service-oriented. And then when we think about software startups, just the proliferation of open source software that now anybody that wants to write software has access to. And then when you're thinking about SaaS-based businesses, there's this trend of mobility. We all have mobile devices, the Internet of Things, and also because all these things are connected, there's big data there. So 64% of small and medium-sized businesses, they rely on cloud-based technology to drive growth and boost their productivity. And 88% of these businesses actually are considering investing in new SaaS solutions in the next 2 to 3 years. So what does this mean? Well, it means that there's an opportunity for startups to focus on SaaS. That drives business growth and increases their productivity. And so traditionally, when you're a startup and you're thinking about launching your company, and you probably are going to, specifically in Alaska, and you're going to want some help to do it, you go and you try to find an accelerator. And there's a great accelerator here. But the question is, well, what happens if you're not in the validation stage, you're in the idea stage? And if you don't have a founding team, you just are a single entrepreneur. And so then if you just go back to generating at the idea stage, there's another model called the incubator model. But in between the incubator model and the actual accelerator model, there's a new model being developed, which is the venture studio model, which is where a company partners with an entrepreneur to help build the business. And that's called this venture studio. And so one of the biggest venture studios that's been around is this company called Pioneer Squares Labs, actually based down in Seattle. And so they've been doing this for several years, and because of the success of the startups that they've created in their venture studio, and then they go off and they spin out and continue their lives. Last April, they were able to raise $80 million to continue to fund these businesses after they leave their venture studio. But what's more exciting is that the largest accelerator in the nation or in the world, Techstars, last month just announced that they were going to be launching their own venture studio and embracing this model. And so this is from the Techstars website. So their venture studio enables you to rapidly envision, validate, and launch disruptive new startups. And so, well, how does this actually change the model for startups, particularly ones that are focused on building SaaS? And so before we had that one trend line, and when the venture studio was partners with the entrepreneur, they bring their human capital, some IP, and because they're helping build a business, there's less capital that's required, increases the time, and so hopefully the idea is that you're increasing the success and the time that it takes to make it to the promised land. And so, yeah, we're up here focused on building and investing in software as a service based businesses, and doing that by partnering with Alaskan entrepreneurs that have some idea and taking this idea and going from zero, which is the idea, to product market fit, which is the one. And so why Alaska? Well, software can be built anywhere that has internet, and luckily there's good internet here. And yeah, specifically for tech workers, my brother's in Valdez right now programming away because his internet is too good. And so there is this growing trend for working remote and connected. Again, that's when my brother's out in Valdez and we can't get him here to Juneau. But then some of the other things, that there's no personal income tax. So traditionally when you think about tech workers, they're down in California, high personal income tax. While Seattle and Washington doesn't have personal income tax, there is a business tax there. Up here, no business tax. But ultimately what it comes down to is that it's just a higher quality of life. Alaska provides a strong sense of community and amazing connection to nature, and hopefully we can keep that going for the next 200 years. And so what we're, and kind of our approach that we've been taking over the last 8 months is, in addition to building a team, but actually building a software toolkit that we can take a software engineer's idea that, or some code that they have that solves a specific problem, plug it into this the software framework that allows it to actually be a scalable SaaS-based business. And this toolkit also is integrated with various components that you need to actually create a SaaS-based business, such as Intercom for marketing and CRM, Stripe for billing. Because a lot of times when you're trying to start a SaaS-based business, you can create a scalable app, but it actually needs to be a business, and there's a lot of other components that you need to make that happen. And so, yeah, and so this model just kind of reinforces how can we create repeatable SaaS-based businesses, which kind of limits the need for financing. Again, we don't, and then, yeah, increases the time to market and hopefully the velocity. We kind of have a unique way when we build our software to hopefully give the companies that we partner with a strategic advantage by embracing this idea of microservices with continued delivery. If you want to talk more about that, we can talk about that later. But if you're thinking about getting into, if you want to start a startup, perhaps in SaaS, there's a few different trends that are going on in 2019. So the first biggest buyer of SaaS software is obviously engineering teams, the same people who build all this software. The second is actually business operations, as far as when it comes to the amount of spend for SaaS-based software and the number of subscriptions. So how can you actually use SaaS to streamline business processes? We were talking about a lot of businesses, small and medium, run their business, well, a lot of them actually run their business only on their mobile device. Well, how can you actually create software to improve that? And then the third one, artificial intelligence and machine learning. How can you use software to ultimately create a more personalized user experience that helps these businesses grow and make more money? So that's, yeah, my name's Lucas Brown from Geeks in the Woods, and here helping build SaaS-based businesses.